Masechet Baba Batra, Daf Ayin. We mentioned yesterday that if I say I'm selling you a field, that's all I say. I don't add any other words. And there are large trees on it, big carob trees or sycamore trees that are already, either the carob tree is already grafted or the sycamore tree is already big enough that we are taking pieces off of it, cutting it to use it. So those trees are considered separate entities, not subsumed with as just part of the field, and therefore they are not included in the sale. In other words, if I say I'm selling you a field, I get to keep those large trees. Now we have a follow-up question. Be'amine Rav Acha bar Huna merav Sheshat. Chus meharov peloni, chus misadan peloni, mahu. What if I say, this is Rav Acha bar Huna is asking Rav Sheshat. If I say, I'm selling you a field, except for this carob tree, or this particular sycamore tree. But there are also lots of other trees on it. There's 10 sycamore trees, and I just say, except for this particular one. So what do I mean by that, by adding that word, that phrase? Here's the two sides. Maybe what I mean to say is, I am keeping from myself as the seller only this one sycamore tree, and I am implying thereby that all the other sycamore trees I intend to sell. And they do go over. Even though if I said nothing, if I just said I'm giving you the field, I would keep all the sycamore trees. But if I say I'm giving you the field except for this one sycamore tree, adding that phrase actually gives you more, because that means I only want to keep one, and the rest I'm willing to give over. Is that the way it is? Or the other side is, you don't get any sycamore trees. For some reason, I specified this sycamore tree. It's my favorite tree. I love sitting under it. I love using it. Or maybe because I want to specify so that I get a path to it. As we said in some dapim earlier, if I sell be'ayin yafa in a generous way, fine, I'm giving you all the field. I keep for myself the sycamore trees, but not a path to it to get there. And so, but if I say I'm keeping a specific tree, maybe I'm saying that so that I can get the path. But really, I just happen to be specifying one, but that doesn't mean that I want to give over the others. I'm specifying one for some reason, but I want to keep all the sycamore trees. And just because I'm adding a phrase doesn't mean that I'm giving the rest away. If I said nothing, I would keep the sycamore trees. So certainly if I say, and in particular, I'm keeping this one. That's just I'm saying in particular, but I keep all of them. That's the two sides of the question. And Rav Sheshat has an answer. Amar le lo kana. He says the buyer does not get any of the sycamore trees. We follow the second possibility. I specified selling you the field except for this sycamore tree. I really mean to hold back all the sycamore trees. I want to just really make sure this one, or I want a path to it. That's what I mean, and I'm not giving away all the sycamore trees. Okay, so that's his answer. We have a challenge to his answer. Rav Acha asks, Itibeh, chus mecharuf peloni, chus misadan peloni lo kana. My lava to harub hu de lo kana, hashar harubin kana. We have a braita about this very case, and it says in the braita that if I say I'm selling you a field except for this carob tree, or except for that sycamore tree, he does not acquire it. The buyer does not acquire it. Now, does not acquire what? This baraita isn't so clear. Doesn't it mean that he does not acquire that particular tree, but the other trees he does get? Doesn't that? And that what it means? Lo kana is only about that particular tree. So that would mean that all the other trees, by adding that phrase, he's actually saying, listen, I only want that one, and the rest I'm giving to you. So this is a contradiction to Rav Sheshat's answer. Amar le la afilu shat harubin nami lo kana. And Rav Sheshat says, no, that's not what it means. When it says lo kana, that is referring to all the trees. The buyer doesn't get any of them. And the seller just said, except for this particular one, because he wanted a path, because that's his favorite, but really he doesn't get any. And look, kana can refer to all of them, so I have no problem. And in fact, Rav Sheshat doubles down and says, I have a proof. Teda, de'ilu amar le sadi mechura lecha, chus mi sadeh pelonit, hahi hu de la kane ha'achranayata kane, Ela lo kana, hachaname lo kana. My proof is just from this following logical case. if I say to you, my field is sold to you, except for that field. Let's say I have 20 fields in my portfolio, and I say, singular, my field, I'm selling you one field. And I say, except for this particular field, let's say one near it, one that I really want to make sure to keep. I want to make it clear, I'm not selling you this field, I'm selling you one of the other of the 19 that I own. So in that case, for sure, right, how would you interpret it? Would you say that one is not sold, but all 19 other ones are sold? In other words, because I added this exclusion phrase, and I said, except for this field, does that mean I intend to sell you the 19 others that I own? Obviously not, because it says sadi, I'm selling you a field, my field. Rather, he does not get the other fields. So too, the same thing would be true here, right? And it's clear in this case that I'm not selling you all my fields except for that one. I just want to point out this one in particular. So too, the same thing with here. I say I'm selling you my field. Listen, this sycamore tree I am keeping. Doesn't mean I want to give you all the other sycamore trees. I just want to reference this one in particular. This version of the text is what you find in printed editions and even most manuscripts, and is the one that Rashbam prefers. However, in the best manuscript of Masechet Baba Batra, which is the Hamburg manuscript, and also Rabbeinu Hananel and other Rishonim, and even Rashbam quotes this other version, it says something that actually explains this section a bit better. It says, Ela lidameh hachaname lidameh. There for money, so too also here for money. What it means is that when I say my field is sold to you except for this field, so what do I mean? What do I actually mean by that? I'm selling you one field. So what does it mean when I say except for this field? I could just say if I meant I don't want to sell this field, so just say I'm selling you field B, and that way I'll know, not field A. Or say I'm selling you a field, but not field A. So what does it mean I'm selling you this field except for that field? Like, how does that even make sense? So the way it makes sense is lidmeh. It's for the monetary value. Let's say I'm selling you a field, and that field, the whole field itself is worth $100,000. But I don't want to sell you the whole field. I want to keep for myself one section of it. So how do I say that? I say I'm selling you that whole field except for part of that field that is worth the monetary value of some other field. So I have some other field near it, and that's worth $10,000. So I say I'm selling you the $100,000 field except for that field that's worth $10,000. What I mean by that is I'm selling you 90% of that field, but I'm keeping for myself 10% of it. And so too, that means that is the same meaning here. I say I'm selling you my field except for this sycamore tree. So what does that even mean? If I'm keeping all the trees, so then how do I parse that? I'm selling you a field, but I'm not selling you something from within that field, because I'm saying except for. So here too, that will be in effect what it means. I'm selling you a field worth $100,000. This sycamore tree here is worth $5,000. And so what I'm saying is I'm selling you this entire field except for $5,000 worth of the field. And so I'm pointing to the sycamore tree as a reference for a value that is a certain monetary amount. Okay, all that was one version of the question and the answer. Here's another version that's very similar to the first one, except it's talking about half a tree. Vika de amri, be'amine ravacha barhuna merav shashat. חוץ מחסי חרוב פלוני, חוץ מחסי סדן פלוני, מהו? שאר חרובין ודאי לקנה. מה ששייר באותו חרוב קנה, או דילמה אפילו מה ששייר באותו חרוב נמי לקנה. Here the question is, if I say I'm selling you a field except for half of this carob tree, or except for half of this sycamore tree. What does that mean? So now for sure, all the other trees, I have 20 other trees in the field. Those for sure I'm keeping for myself, because I only said half of this tree. So at most, what I mean by that is I'm keeping half of this tree, but you get the other half. So that's one side of it. So I say I'm keep selling you the field except for half of this tree. I'm keeping for myself half of that tree and all the other trees, but I'm giving you the other half of the tree. So is that what I meant? Because I meant something by this. So it has to have some effect. Yeah, you get that tree. Or does it mean, or do we say, no, not so. Even that very tree, the whole thing, I am keeping for myself. And I said this half of this tree because it's my favorite side of this tree, or I want to keep a path to it, or I want the monetary value of it within the field. I want this whole tree is worth 5,000. I want half the tree means I want to keep for myself the part of the field worth 2,500. So how do we parse this? What do we say? That was the question. Amar le lakaneh. And Rav Shashat says, no, the buyer does not get any trees, not even half of the tree that I specified. It doesn't get anything at all. Itibe, chusme hasi harub peloni, chusme hasi sadan peloni, shar harubin lo kana. My love, shar harubin hu de la kana. Ha mashashir beoto harub kana, a challenge from the Braita. And here in this version of the Braita, it's referring to this very same case. If I say I'm selling you a field except for half of this carob tree or half of this sycamore tree, then all the other trees are not acquired by the buyer. So when it says all the other trees, doesn't that mean all the other trees are not acquired, but the other half of the tree that I'm keeping for myself, the buyer does acquire? Isn't that a proper inference from this baraita? And Rav Shashat says, no. Amar le'la, afilu mashashir be'oto harub nami lakana. No, even the other half of the tree that I said I'm keeping for myself, I keep that for myself also. I just reference this half of the tree for some other reason. Teda de'ilu amar le, sadi mechura lecha hus me hasi sadeh peloni, hahu hu de la kana, ha'idach kana, and I'll give you a proof. It's a logical proof. If I say I'm selling you this field except for half of that other field. So what does that mean? Would we say that that the half of that other field I'm keeping for myself, but the other half of that field I'm giving you? I never even gave you any part of that field in the first place. I'm selling you field A over here. That's what I said. Here's field A is sold to you except for half of field B. So that means you're going to get the other half of field B? That was not even part of the sale. So obviously not. Ela lakaneh, hachanameh lakaneh. Rather, in that case, for sure, you don't get the other half of field B. For some reason, I said something about about half of field B, but you don't get the other half. Here too, also, when I say I'm giving you this field except for half a sycamore, it does not mean that you get the other half. Rather, this is a reference to the monetary value. For this line also, we look at the manuscripts. This is this paragraph, and here again, the Hamburg manuscript says, Ela lidmeh hachaname lidmeh. There are a couple of other manuscripts that also talk about dameh, meaning it's the monetary value. That's what I mean, and therefore, the statement makes perfect sense. I'm selling you this field, except for half of that other field. That means half of the value of that other field. And here too, I'm selling you this field except for half of the value of this particular sycamore tree. I certainly don't mean to sell you the other sycamore trees, and I certainly don't even mean to sell you any part of this sycamore tree. I'm just using it as a monetary reference. Next, we have an unrelated question. This really belongs in Baba Metziah, about the things that someone gives to someone else to watch, and then they get lost in different claims. The reason why this is here is because we are going to make reference to the Dayane Gola, the judges of exile. We mentioned them over here, and this was at the previous, at the very end of the previous recording, Dayane Gola, the judges of exile, who Rashbam identifies as Shemuel and Karna. They're going to come up again, and so that's why we're going into the following question. Be'amine Rav Amram merav Chista, hamafkid esel habero bishtar, ve'amar lo hechezartim lecha mahu. Question that Rav Amram asks Rav Chista. If someone gives someone else some items to watch, he has some jewelry. Listen, I'm going away. Can you hold my jewelry? And he also, because it's an important item, he gets a document. And so the document says, the watchman writes, yes, I received this jewelry to watch until you come back. And so the owner of the jewelry is holding on to this document. And then he comes back from his trip and he says, okay, I'd like to collect my jewelry back. And the watchman says, oh, I already returned it to you. All right, what are you talking about? I don't still have it. Mahu, what do we say in this case? Do we believe him or not? Here's the two sides. Mi amrinan migo di ibae amad ne'ensu meheman hashta name meheman hashta name meheman. Do we say, since the watchman has a migo, he could have said, listen, I know you gave them to me, but what do you know? While you were away, some armed robbers came and they stole the jewelry from me. There was nothing I can do. It was totally beyond my ability to save them. So if he said that, he would have been believed. Now, the Gemara is going to mention in a second. He's only believed there with a vow. He has to make a vow that this happened. Okay, but leave that for a second. He would have been believed and would not have to pay. And therefore, now that he says, you did give it to me, but I returned it to you, so we should also believe him. That's one side. Or do we not apply that migo in this case? Because here, the owner of the jewelry still has the document. And he says, listen, why would I still have the document if you returned it to me? Generally, when the watchman returns an item, he says, okay, give me that document. I don't want you to use that document to come and claim that I never gave it to you, right? Give me back the document, rip up the document. So the fact that I still am holding on to the document is actually proof that you didn't return it to me. And so maybe the presence of the document is stronger than the migo. What do we say in this case? Rav Chisda answers, Amar le meheman. Answer is, the watchman is believed, and we do rely on that migo. Now, he didn't actually explain, what do you do with the document? So Rav Amram presses further. Yeah, but can't the owner say, well, if you returned it to me, then what am I doing with your document? Right? So what about that claim? Amar le v'lita'amich v'chi amar le ne'ensu v'himase amar le shetarach biyadi my ba'eh. And Rav Chisda answers, wait, according to you, right, you're the one that asked the question in the first place and presented this possibility of this migo. So according to that, if the watchman in fact said it was stolen beyond my control, so would the owner be able to say, oh, then what's the document doing in my possession? That would not be a valid counter because, yeah, the document's in your possession because I never returned them, because they were stolen. So, yeah, they were stolen and you still have the document. So the document would be irrelevant if the watchman were lying and said that, if he was lying, he could have had a better lie and said they were stolen, and then the document would have been irrelevant. So too, he's believed when he says, I returned them, and you have a document. So what? If I was lying, I could have gotten away with you having the document and saying it was stolen. Therefore, believe me also when I say it was returned, and for some reason, I didn't get the document, right? I don't know, sometimes you return something, and the document, I don't have the document at home, I'll bring it to you tomorrow. I'll rip it up. Right, don't worry, I'll rip up the check, right? I'm not going to keep it. And so, for some reason, you still have the document. But what's the difference? The migo still stands. Okay, so Rav Amram challenges further. Amar le sof sof ki amar le ne'ensu lav shivu abae. So Rav Amram says, even with that migo, and you say he's believed, it's true. The watchman is believed to say that it was stolen, and therefore he doesn't have to pay, but he does have to give a vow. So too here, when he says, I returned it to you, shouldn't he have to give a vow that he returned it? Hachanameh, my ne'eman bishvuah. And Rav Chisda says, yes, that's what I meant. When I said that he's believed, I meant, when I say believed, what do you mean believed? Believed with a vow, right? Just like in the migo, he would have to take a vow. So too, when he's believed here, he has to take a vow. And that's in fact what I meant. And so that's the bottom line of this answer. If someone, I give you jewelry, I come back from my trip, I have a document, and I say, where is it? And you say, I returned it to you. The watchman should be believed with a vow, because if he was lying, he could have lied and said it was stolen, so he should be believed in this case as well. Good. Now the Gemara is going to present a potentially parallel machloket. Lema biplukta dehane tana'eh. Rav Amram and Rav Chisda, are they arguing along the same lines as the following two Tanaim, the Tanya? Shetar kis hayose al hayetomim, dayane gola amre nishba vegobe kulo, dayane eres Yisrael amre nishba vegobe mehesa, udekula al ma'it lehu lenehar de'ae, de'amar nehar de'ae, hay iska palga milveh upalka pikadon. A Braita says that if I have a document regarding a purse, what is a purse document? It's talking about a partnership. I have money and I want to go into business with you. I have $100 and I want to invest. I want you to go and sell things on my behalf, and we'll split the profits. Now, how do you arrange this? Because it can't be that I'm lending you the money and then I'm getting a profit, because that would be interest. So that's a problem. So we're following the Nehara. I'll skip to this and explain this first. We're following the sages of Nehara, because they say when we make an iska, a business venture like this, here's how we think of it. This is how we structure it so that it'll be permitted. I'm giving you $100. That's the kis, that the purse that we're talking about. And we say as follows: 50% of it, 50 of the dollars, that's a loan. A loan means you have to give me back $50. No interest. That money, if you make a profit on it, you keep all of the profit of that $50. That's one part of it. The other half is a pikadon, right? Palga meve, palga pikadon, that I'm asking you to invest on my behalf. Take this $50 and go invest it. Go buy stuff, buy goods, and sell them. Any profit on that, I get all of that profit. That's the pikadon part of it. And so in the end, I'm giving you $100. You're going to get half of the profit, and I'm going to get half the profit. But the part that's a loan, I'm not getting any money for. Any money back, so there's no interest. And the other part, I'm giving you money and you're investing it on my behalf. I would have to add some small amount as a fee for your consideration for doing that work for me, so that it's not considered interest from the other part. But that's a legal way of entering into a partnership. So now we have that case. So I give this to the investor, and the investor dies, and now I want to get my $100 back. So I go to the orphans. Now, what can I collect from the orphans? The part that is a loan, so that's like collecting any other loan from an orphan, that I have to swear, even if for the father, I wouldn't necessarily have to swear, but for orphans, in order to extract money from orphans, you have to make a swear that is owed, because we want to protect money of orphans. Good. So, the judges of the exile, that's what we're talking about, the judges of exile at the end of the previous stuff, that's why we're bringing this in here. They say that I can make a vow and I can collect the entire amount, the loan amount for sure, and also the pikadon. We'll explain that in a minute. Whereas the judges of Eretz Yisrael say I make a vow that you owe me at least half, and I can collect half, the half that's a loan, but not the half that is a pikadon, that was a deposit that I gave you to invest on my behalf. Now, what's the essence of their machloket? Maila behakami palge. Temor sabar maseh amar le, shetarach biyadi mai ba'e, umor sabar la amari. Is it not the case that these two Tanaim are arguing along the following lines? That the sages of exile who say that the investor can collect the entire amount, they must agree with Rav Amram. And they say, well, if you paid back, if your father paid back, then what am I still doing with this document? The document says that I gave you $100, half is a loan, and the other half is a pikadon, is I'm giving to you to hold on, and you're going to invest it for me, and then you're going to give it back to me with the profits. I have a document. So therefore, you cannot claim, it was lost as a pikadon, it was stolen beyond our control. Therefore, you should believe us if we say that it was returned. No, I have the document. You can't say the money was returned to me, that your father returned me the money, because then he would have taken the document. And therefore, since that's a valid claim, the possession of a document overrides any migo. That's the opinion of Rav Amram and the sages of exile, and that's why I can collect not only the loan, which I can always collect with a vow, but I can also collect the pikadon. Whereas the sages of Eretz Yisrael, they say, no, we do not say that argument. Just because I have a document, that doesn't mean anything, since the orphans or their father could have said, it was stolen beyond our control. It's a pikadon, right? Fine. You asked me to watch it for you. Even you hired me to watch it for you. Armed robbers stole it. What can I tell you? And you would have been believed, and my possession of the document would not have meant anything. So too, that migo works. and you can to say that the money was returned to you. The orphans can say, "Our father returned you the money," and the fact that I have a document, so what? If they were lying, they could have had a lie would have made the possession of the document irrelevant, and therefore we do not take into consideration the possession of the document. And that's why the sages of Eretz Yisrael say that I can collect the loan part of it. The loan is still a loan, but I cannot collect the pikadon. And so now we see that these two Amoraim are arguing along the same lines of these two Amoraim, which is a bit of a problem, because then the Amoraim should just say, I hold like the sages of Eretz Yisrael, or like the judges of Exile. So we say, no, in fact, this is not a necessary interpretation. Lo dekule alma it lehud Rav Chisda. In fact, everybody agrees with Rav Chisda that you can say amigo. Even though I have a document, we can ignore the document. Behacha beha kami palge. Temor sabarim ita de pera'e memar hava amar umor saber emur malachamavet hu de anaseh. Rather, here the two Tanaim are arguing along the following lines: that the sages of Exile think that, let's say I'm the investor, I would come and ask you, hey orphans, do you know if your father paid it back? Did he ever tell you? Now the orphans say, I don't know, the father never told us. We don't know. We're just claiming maybe our father paid you back, right? And I have to come prove that he wasn't, that it wasn't paid back. And I have a document. And the orphans say, well, our father we could have said it was stolen, and you believe us. So therefore, you should believe us if we claim that maybe it was paid back. What do you mean maybe? Did your father ever tell you it was paid back? No, then he never told us that. Well, here's the main point of the argument. If it's true that the father paid me back, he would have told you. He would have told his orphans, hey, you know what? I had this loan out. I just paid it back. I'm so relieved. And he would tell his orphans because he knows there's a document out there against it. And should he die, he wants to make sure his orphans know, listen, I paid that back, and don't let that guy with the document come and collect again. So the father would have told his sons that. If the father didn't say it, then that is a proof that it was never paid back. And therefore, even though in this argument, the father, if he was alive, he could have said this argument. He could have said, I paid it back, and believe me, because if I was lying, I could have said it was stolen, and then we would believe him, even with the document. That's true, we're following Rav Chisda, but the orphans cannot make the same claim, because if the father paid back, he would have told the orphans, and the orphans don't know. That's the sages of Exile, and that's why the investor can come and collect not only the loan, but also the amount of the pikadon. However, the judges in Eretz Yisrael say not necessarily would the sons know. It could be that the angel of death got there first and prevented him from telling his sons that. The father did in fact pay back the loan, and then he was on his way. He was going to tell his sons in 2 hours from now when he saw them, but he suddenly had a heart attack and he died and never got a chance to tell them. And therefore, the fact that the sons don't know if their father paid back or not is not meaningful. It doesn't mean that the father necessarily didn't pay back. And that's why the sages of Eretz Yisrael say that I can collect the loan part of it, because there I make a swear and I collect the loan like any other loan. But the pikadon part of it, since they could have said that it was stolen, therefore they are believed to say, well, we think that we think that it was paid back. We don't know, but it could be, and our father wouldn't necessarily have told us, and therefore I would have to go and prove that it was not paid back. And therefore, the argument of the Tanaim is not necessarily parallel to our argument between the two Amoraim. We next quote a statement that will support the logic that we just used for Dayane Gola, the judges of Exile, that if a father pays something back, then he tells his children about it. And he is likely to do that before he dies. So we're just going to support that position. Shalach Rav Huna bar Avin, hamafkid esel chavero bishtar, v'amar lo, hechezartiv lecha ne'eman. So Rav Huna bar Avin sent the following ruling in a letter to his colleagues, and it said two rulings in this letter. Number one, if someone deposits some item with someone else, all right, give you some jewelry to watch for me, and then I come back for it, and the watchman says, I returned it to you. He is believed, probably, as we said before, because of the migo. And even though I have a document, you could have said it was stolen by armed robbers, and you would have been believed, and therefore you're also believed to say it was returned. That's halacha number one. The second halacha is the case we were talking about regarding a shtar kis, a purse document. If I give you money to invest, half of it to invest, half of it as a loan, and then turns out that I give it to some guy and that guy died, and now I want to come collect from the orphans. The halacha is that I can make a vow that I did not get any money back and I can collect the entire amount. In other words, that the halacha is like the dayane gola in this case. Okay, so that's the two halachot. We ask, Tarteh, can you say both of them? They seem to contradict each other. On the one hand, he said that if I come to collect my jewelry from a pikadon, from the father while he's alive, and he says, I returned it to you, then the watchman is believed. I can't get it back. But then he says, if I go to the orphans, then then the orphans cannot say, oh, our father returned it to you, but rather I can swear and I can take the whole thing. So in the first halacha, we believe the watchman. In the second halacha, we believe the owner who gave the item to the watchman in the first place. So how can you explain this contradiction? And the answer is shaneh hatam dimita de para'eh memad hava amar. In that case, in the second case, if in fact the father paid back, then the father would have told his sons. So we asked the orphans, listen, you're claiming, or sometimes the court can claim on behalf of orphans, because the court will help out orphans if they don't know how to claim it themselves. So the orphans are claiming, oh, maybe our father returned it to you. So then the investor comes and says, listen, did your father ever say that he returned it? No, he never told us that. But maybe he did. Maybe he never didn't tell us. So the court says, no, that's not valid. That's not a valid claim to say that your father didn't tell you. If your father paid it back, then we assume that he would have told you immediately before he died. And the fact that he didn't tell you, that is a proof that he didn't pay it back. And that explains the difference. A father, when he's alive, he can make a claim of amigo. Listen, believe me that I paid you back, because if I was lying, I could have said it was stolen. So therefore, believe me now, and that overrides even a shtar. But the orphans cannot make that claim because they don't know, and they wouldn't necessarily know if the father paid back. And therefore, the orphans cannot be believed when they say, maybe our father paid back. No, you would have known if he was paid back. That's actually proof that they weren't paid back. And therefore, the investor is believed to vow. He says, listen, I was never paid back, and the investor can collect in the second case. And so this is the very same logic that we just mentioned before. And so the fact that Avuna bar Ravin said both of these halachot, the only way we can reconcile them is using that same logic. So that's a proof that that logic is in fact the best way to explain the machloket between the two Tanaim. Finally, what is the halacha? Rava amar hilcheta nishba v'gobe mechesa. Rava says that if the investor, I'm an investor, I gave to someone $100, half as a loan, half as a pikadon, and then he dies, I can make a vow and I can collect only half, only the loan amount, but the pikadon, the court will offer an argument on behalf of the orphans that maybe the pikadon was paid back. And the father would have been believed if he said that, and therefore the orphans will be believed if that is their claim. And so that's the halacha, like the laws, like the Dayanim of Eretz Yisrael. In our version we have above. Rava doesn't say like the law, like the Dayanim of Eretz Yisrael, because in fact we're going to see in a second there's two versions of what they said. Amar Mozutra, Hilcheta Kedayane Gola. Mozutra says the halacha is like the judges of exile, which in the version that we have, they say that I can collect the entire amount. Amar Ravina le Mozutra, Amar Rava nishba v'gobe mechesa. So Ravina asked Mozutra, how could you say that the law is like the judges of exile, that it collects the whole thing? That goes against what Rava just taught. That he said that the investor can make a vow and collect only the loan part, but not the part that was a pikadon. So why are you going against Rav's halacha? Amar le anan de dayane gola ipecha matninan la. And Mar Zutra says, oh, in my version, I have the opposite version of what they say. And in my version, it's the judges of exile who say you can only collect half. So when I said that halacha follows the judges of exile, I meant the very same thing that Rava said. So it's the same content, even though we have different attributions, but the main thing is not the attribution, but rather the content. And since we agree on the content, the halacha, bottom line, is that the investor can collect only the loan part, which he can always collect, because in that case, he can't say, I returned it to you. I made a vow that, and I say I was never returned, and you can't, in the case of a loan, there's no migo. You can't say it was stolen. Even if I give you a loan, even if it's stolen by armed robbers, you still have to pay me back, right? That's the definition of a loan. The loan is, I'm giving you this money, you're going to use it, you're going to spend it. You have to give me $50 no matter what. I don't care what happened to the $50 that I gave you. So there's no migo for the first $50, and I could get it from the watchman himself if he's alive, or from the orphans with a vow. But the pikadon is completely different. I'm giving you this thing to watch. Only if that thing is still around, then I collect it. If it's stolen, I don't collect it. Since there's a migo that you could have said it was stolen, therefore the father is believed also to say that it was returned. And just like a father is believed, so too the orphans, we plead on their behalf, or they plead for themselves, that this our father must have returned it. And they are believed also. And that's why the bottom line halacha is that the investor can only collect the half that's a loan, but not the half that's a pikadon. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.